A good Erev Shabbos and a Gemar Chatima Tova, a happy and healthy and sweet new year. You never know where inspiration is going to come from. I happen to find it at the National Health Service website from the UK. I was writing for the Nachas, which hopefully you all received and had a chance to look at, about returning to normal and how really we aren't going back, we're going forward. Not to how we were in 2019, but rather how we can be in 2022, 2023, and beyond, 5783, and going forward, with the knowledge and experience of the past 2.5 years that makes us more compassionate, more focused, more sensitive, and wiser. I was hunting for some tips and insight into what return to normal really is, and what to keep in mind when heading in that direction of return, and what should pop up on Google but the NHS's website, top bits of advice to cope with the anxiety of going back to normal, as they put it. Obviously, they're talking about COVID, but I think what they have to say fits very well for our purposes. I visited the UK at numerous points in my life. It was the first place I ever visited outside of the US or Canada, but I never had occasion to make use of National Health Service. Is that a good thing or not? I have no basis for evaluation. But I'll tell you this, their website was a delight if you're looking for help in writing a Shabbat Shuva drasha. So let me share with you some of National Health's top tips for returning to normal, presented for your consideration here, with just a little bit of editorializing to fit them into the high holiday season. I'm guessing that NHS did not set out to give advice for Shabbat Shuva, or even Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur in general, but then again, life is full of surprises, is it not? And these all just seem to fit with what we're trying to accomplish during this very special time of year when, as our sages teach us in the Gemara, Rosh Hashanah, Chai, Amud Aleph, Dir Shuavaya Beimatzo, seek God where he is found, Karuhu B'yosei Karov, call unto him where he is when he is near. This is the 10 days of tshuva between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The first tip that NHS advises is go at your own pace. Something about this might be unnecessary when we're talking about Jews and learning and observance and tshuva. We're pretty good at going at our own pace and not letting anyone push us around. On the one hand, Pirkei Avos says, repent one day before your last day. So of course, that leads us to assume nothing and to do tshuva every day. On the other hand, we know that slow and steady wins the race, right? Some people who dive into something full bore may soon figure out that they bit off more than they can chew, which is also not good. Then they go back to nothing, which is even more not good. Much better to go slowly and steadily, making progress at a rate you can absorb and that works for your own personal growth and development. Someone sent me some other rabbi's talk from one of the holidays, from which I did glean one decent joke. A turtle goes into the police station to report that he's been attacked by a gang of snails. All these snails ganged up on him. So the police ask him to say, could you please tell us exactly what happened? The turtle says, I don't know. It all happened so fast. One of the more interesting comments from people in the past few years, when many of us, for many different reasons, were davening at home rather than coming to shul, especially on the high holidays, was that they were able to daven at their own pace. We are fortunate that we each have a set of machzorim, a gift to our kehillah from some years ago that keeps on giving. So wherever we were able to daven and daven at the ideal speed for ourselves. We were never behind in the davening. Wherever we were, that was the right place. And when services were over, when we closed the book, it was great. Now, the key is to bring that calm, that relaxed confidence back to shul and still daven at your own pace, and take the strength that comes from davening together with a tzibur, with a congregation, with our beautiful chazanim for Yom Kippur coming up, and know that our prayers have that much more oomph behind them as part of a kehillah. Another tip in this list is do not avoid things entirely. That's good advice. There was a time during lockdown, which in some ways is still hard to believe we went through. We were not doing anything. We were avoiding anything outside our homes entirely. L'chaim was on Zoom. Groceries delivered. No shul. So we all probably return to activity at different speeds, which is okay. The thing is not to avoid life completely. So in this Shabbos of return, Shabbat Shuva, you have to figure out what it is on your list that you have yet to return to, figure out a plan, and start moving in that direction. Third thing on their list is to get your information from the right sources. This is most important now, more than ever. Google can find us a lot of information, but provides very little wisdom in how to know whether what we find is worthwhile or not. We have to know that the information and insight we get is from a good source, number one, and even more so, how to apply it appropriately and correctly to our own situation. I've often heard, even before COVID, that doctors will tell their patients, please don't go home and Google this diagnosis, because people will Google whatever the diagnosis is and they'll find a 10-year-old study that's wildly out of date and rendered completely inaccurate by the advances that have taken place in the 10 years since. Now, our sources in Jewish life don't go out of date after 10 years or 100 or 1,000 years, but we do have to know how to apply the timeless and transcendent values of Torah to our immediate situation. Some things are pretty obvious. Tzedakah, it's always good. Shabbos, always good, especially on Saturday, Friday night and Saturday. Kosher, always good. Torah study is always good. In the realm of medicine and halacha, Jewish medical ethics, where knowledge changes and prognoses change, and the understanding of the etiology of physical and mental illness changes as time goes along, halacha might have had one thing to say to a situation as it existed 100 years ago, and might have a different view now. Discussing what you learn with a friend and bringing it up in a shir or a discussion, as we have regularly in our kehillah, and talking it over with a knowledgeable and competent expert whom you trust, these are more important than ever, it seems, particularly in our age of disinformation and misinformation. For those who study Talmud with us in any of our shiurim, you know that no one in Talmudic conversations accepts statements at face value. The questions come up of, where did you hear this? What's the basis in the scripture for this? Didn't we learn something contradictory or different in another part of the Talmud? All these are skeptical and healthy modes of inquiry to decrease the likelihood that we fall prey to simple or shallow thinking or information or insight that does not benefit us. Another tip is to discuss any changes with others, says this list of advice of how to decrease anxiety. Well, that's certainly good advice, and it shows how important it is to be connected to community. If you have a network of friends and acquaintances who have a similar frame of reference, some experiences in common, you can ask them, hey, did you hear about this new pizza place that just opened up? Is it any good? What about this new product I saw at the grocery store? Don't you think the rabbi's talks are going on a little too long these days? He used to not be so long-winded. You see, if you have others who share your perspective and notice changes along with you and point out to you that, hey, today's the first day of Hanukkah and your sidders turn to Musaf for Sukkot, that's a helpful insight. Hey, east is that way and you're facing west. It's good to see ourselves through the eyes of others sometimes and keep ourselves pointed in the direction that we want to be. Next thing it says in the list, make time to relax and really relax. Chetzio l'Hashem, chetzio lachem, says the Rambam on Yom Tov, brought in Shulchan Aruch. Half the day for God, for prayer and learning the Torah, reading the Torah and the Haftorah, and half for you. Enjoy a leisurely meal with family and friends, not rushing off to go anywhere, not having to be somewhere else other than where you are. And maybe a shluf as well. Of the many things that are great about our age and living in our times, the value placed on rest and relaxation is not one of them. When you go to a resort or to a beach and you see people on working vacation, they're in the place where vacationing happens, but they have their cell phone with them, they have their laptop on the plane, in the hotel, at the beach, as if they can do both well. I have no idea what the quality of their work is, but their quality of their relaxation is lousy. They'll come back to the office after a week or two of holiday, and they'll be more tired and more frazzled than when they left. Moreover, as we become more and more attached to our devices, our iPads and our phones and our computers, we take them to bed with us, looking at screens as we're trying to fall asleep, which is bad for our circadian rhythm, throws us all out of kilter. And then the first thing we do in the morning, waking up, instead of Moda'ani, instead of Natilas Yadayim, instead of Shema Yisrael, is doom scrolling, right? Turn on the phone and check through the news feed, the 5 or 6 or 7 hours while you were asleep. How many disasters happened that you have to find out about? What new crises are brewing? What catastrophes are about to happen? There's much to say about this, all this foolishness, and how screens and phones and pads are the new pharaoh, enslaving us and keeping us from being who we truly can be. But for now, suffice it to say that the wisdom of Shabbos, the wisdom of Yom Tov, of pulling the plug on our virtual life and living at least one day, maybe a few days this week, with the people around us, the people at our table and in our homes, the people in shul, is a welcome relief from digital servitude. Think about that one. Next on the list is challenge unhelpful thoughts. Notice that it does not advise us to ignore helpful thoughts. It does not advise us to squash down unhelpful thoughts and hide them away deep somewhere inside ourselves, because neither of those really help in the long run. Rather, the advice here is to challenge unhelpful thoughts. That means interrogate them, question them, see what lies behind, see what lies beneath them. Some are stam anxiety-provoking, some are stam the Yetzer Hara. In either case, and also in the case where nervousness is founded, or anxiety over anything from being at Kiddush, taking part in a simcha, venturing out into a crowd at the mall, or Costco, or a concert, or a ball game, our minds are set to alert us to potential hazards in our path. So it's not a bad idea to listen to your intuition. Then again, these past few years have sort of bent the guardrails of what makes sense and what's too much, over the top. I know of someone who was exceedingly careful in the first round of COVID to avoid contact and avoid the possibility of infection. Nevertheless, when infection snuck into this person's Daled Amos stealthily and undercover later on, it ultimately, unfortunately, had very grave effects. The long and the short of it is to realize that everything has a cost. To venture out into society again has the cost of potential exposure, just as surely as sitting at home and looking at the walls has taken and will continue to take a toll on our emotional and spiritual well-being. When thoughts or perceptions seem to be taking us on a less than helpful path, it's good to at least make them explain where it is they're taking us. Couple of more. Our friends at National Health say, tell someone how you feel. That is great advice. Talk to a friend. As I read it, this is National Health telling us with good reason we should have a chavrusa. A chavrusa is officially your Torah study buddy. A chavrusa, someone you study regularly together with. You pick a text and you do a little piece of it each week, each day, whatever it is. This chavrusa system keeps you on track. It keeps you on task, keeps you from falling asleep, keeps you disciplined and moving forward in your learning. Whatever it is you choose to study, or if you have a chavrusa that you meet on the phone or on Zoom or even in person on a regular basis at a regular time, where that time is the main thing in your calendar, it's there and not squeezed in wherever you can manage it, and you count on each other, you can get a lot out of that relationship, and so can your chavrusa. What's even more, once in a while you get to talking, and since you have a lot of history and a lot of trust built up, you can ask each other serious questions. Just like you ask serious questions of, what do you think this verse in the Torah is really telling us? You can also ask, hey, did you get your booster yet? Are you going to weddings yet? What do you think about shul on Yom Kippur? You think it'll be packed? When you have a friend you trust who's a listening ear, and you are that for them, that's a good buddy system to help each other return to the good things in life. National Health recommends, as a way of minimizing stress as we return to normal life, plan social occasions. Plan social occasions. What a great idea. We could not replicate davening online. We tried Hallel at the very early stages of COVID, the first Pesach Chol HaMoed, if you remember. A number of us got together for Hallel on Zoom. It was great hearing our chazanim, for those who recall, and we could enjoy that, but we could not sing together on Zoom. The technology just is not there. Also, we could not do a virtual Kiddush. It was our best attempt in the most challenging days of COVID, when we could send people home or even to the parking lot out back with Kiddush to go. we're very grateful for Alan's efforts to keep the variety going, and of course our sponsors who rose to the moment. But without friends, without camaraderie, without the very essence of togetherness, it was okay, but it wasn't the same. Now that we seem, according to most reasonable reports, to be able to enjoy some degree of social life, we have to seize it as best we can, make the most of it. I have suggested to people on rare occasions, as they say, JFK, come just for Kiddush. JFK, see? Not comfortable being in shul? At least come enjoy a piece of kugel with us. Say l'chaim. Let's enjoy each other's company, maybe for only 20 minutes. One thing we've come to realize and appreciate as much as anything else during this crazy era has been the importance of being together in 3D, in real life, and sharing the ups and downs of life with each other in real time. So however that looks in the days to come, being with us in the sukkah, outdoors for Kiddush, using the sukkah yourself to meet friends for lunch or coffee, whatever it might be, or getting back to the best social life that you can, it's all good, and it's all important, and it's all welcome and a healthy return to real life that's been on hold for quite some time. Again, not to say that it's risk-free. We wish we could guarantee that, and we still encourage the precautions that are feasible and reasonable to you. As of Shabbos, I think, right? You probably heard that Canada is dropping vaccination requirements for travelers and masking on flights. So at this point, it's really our choice. Of course, we encourage everyone to stick with the level of precaution that makes sense for you, and we heartily encourage everyone to get the vaccine and the new updated booster. At the same time, we encourage all who can to invite one another over, invite one another out, go places, do things together. For as we know, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, the third pshat, each of us sweetens the other. Next tip from NHS. Find routine where you can. Find routine where you can. If you cannot find routine in Jewish life, you are not looking very hard. We have routines to fit every taste and every budget that range from 3 seconds to 50 years, from one chelik to one yovel, one jubilee. We have a routine each week with a different psalm of the day, and 6 weekdays and one Shabbat. We have in Israel a similar routine, 6 work years and 1 sabbatical year when the land is not farmed. We have a routine throughout the year, Rosh Hashanah on the 1st of Tishrei, Yom Kippur on the 10th of Tishrei. We have a festival cycle, Pesach and Sukkot on the 15th of Nisan and Tishrei. We have a routine of counting 7 weeks of 7 days each after Pesach. That's how we know when Shavuos is, and Chanukah and Purim and Tisha B'Av. And that's just the year. Each day we have a routine to wake up, thank God for another day of life, wash our hands, get dressed, bless God for being able to stand up, for being able to see, for being able to get dressed, and so on and so on. And then following that, recite the Shema, daven the Shemona Esrei, which we say 3 times a day routinely, over 1,000 times each year. Are we getting the picture of routine here? Recite some Psalms, study a little Torah, maybe some Talmud. If you can do a page a day, start over at the beginning of the whole Talmud every 7.5 years. Come to shul again, come to shul again. Maybe the angle that a Jew should be looking for is not routine so much as finding the unique in the routine, finding something special in things that we do every day or every week. Talking to so many people about so many things over these many months of weirdness in our lives, the past 30 months, it was definitely those who had a routine who seemed to fare well, all things considered. There were certainly many, many variables. But those who already were davening and just had to figure out now how to daven on their own, with a minyan, without a minyan, that's just a technical problem. It's not an existential problem. Those who had a regular seder, a regular program of learning, and our shul should take pride that we had a full program of learning and we even added to it during COVID. Those who kept to a program overall seemed to experience far less anxiety, far less discombobulation as a result of the upheaval of these last couple of years. In other words, we were grounded, so even when the ground moved a little bit under our feet, we managed to keep our balance. Okay, what does that mean going forward? For those of us who have a good Seder Hayom, Seder Achayim, keep it, strengthen it. Where it's possible, add to it in depth or quality or quantity. And the same goes for everyone else. Find routine where you can, as the list says. If it's only 5 minutes a day, it's 5 minutes more than you were doing before. One day, that 5 minutes could double to 10 minutes. Even a 5-minute study session in the morning, 5 more minutes in the evening. The sages call that Perek Echad Shachris, Perek Echad Arvis. And you're already heading in a good direction. Now again, the truth is it's ideally something of depth and meaning. But that's a very high standard for every day. What if you only go through the motions? I'm fond of quoting, or as it turns out I'm misquoting, but I still like to say it, the late Herman Wouk's book on Judaism, This Is My God, a classic if you haven't read it. And if you have read it, it's also a classic. He says that he put on tefillin and davened every day, I think, even when he was in the Navy, on a ship in World War II. But he wrote in this book, which was written when he was still young, he said, the quote is something like, not exactly, but something like, I really only prayed a couple of times in my life when some major event happened and I wanted to thank God or reach out in some way to express my feelings. But I never would have been able to do that had I not davened every morning. Because then when I really had something to say, I knew how to say it. That's the end of the misquote. In other words, not every day will necessarily be soul-stirring. You're not going to rock the heavens with every Shema, every Shemona Esrei. But it's how we build our skills. And no one is too young or too old to learn how to do things better. The penultimate suggestion, we're almost there, is to keep a journal or a diary or somehow record what you're thinking and feeling. This is not a bad idea at all. Many famous and not so famous people, and even a few infamous people, have kept journals or diaries reflecting on their thought processes, learning from where they were in contrast with where they thought they were going, where they wanted to go, or to simply process their experience through the act of writing, even if they never look at what they wrote again. Studies show that even more than typing words into a word processor or a computer, the act of writing as a deep form of communication, the printed or digital word can't hold a candle to it. Despite texting and emailing speed and convenience, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever come across a letter from a friend or a relative from a long time ago, even from a previous generation, there's nothing like someone's handwriting on paper to convey so much feeling and depth and personality. Whether or not it's read by someone else, the very act of writing accomplishes a tremendous amount. Think back to what we wished each other in the weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah, what we asked and continue even today to ask God to do it for us. Kasvenu b'sefer hachayim leman chelakim chayim. Write us in the book of life for your sake, O living God. Uchsov l'chayim tovim kol b'nei brisecha. Inscribe all the children of your covenant for a good life. On Shabbos, on Yom Tiv. How can we ask such a thing? There's an axiom that God doesn't ask us to do things that he himself doesn't do. God is not a tyrant or a despot who commands his subjects to do unreasonable things, according to the Gemara and Avodah Zarah, page 3a. God rests on Shabbos and tells us to rest on Shabbos. If the corollary works the other way, we shouldn't ask God to write on Shabbos. What are we asking for? Well, it says that only tzaddikim and rashayim are written and sealed right away on Rosh Hashanah. So maybe ours will be during the 10 days. But even more than that, we're asking God to write us in the book of life as if our life depends on it. And in fact, it does. So it's entirely appropriate to ask to be written, even on Yom Tif, even on Shabbos, because it's a question of pikuach nefesh, saving our lives. This is it. Last tip. You ready? Focus on the present. Focus on the present can mean a few things. The most obvious is that we have something to accomplish today, now, in this moment. I might have wished that at the beginning of Elul, I'd undertaken to study a little bit more. Say a few more Psalms, maybe come to a few more classes, or minyanim a little bit more frequently. Maybe I wished I'd focused more closely on Ulpan, that time I was in Israel all summer. Or maybe I still wish that I'd had the opportunity to study at a school that had better Jewish studies than mine did. Or maybe I had all these opportunities and more, but I didn't make the most of them. Or didn't do as well as I should have. Those certainly are water under the bridge, no use crying under spilt milk, and all those other platitudes. My grandfather used to say, what was, ain't. My friend who went into private client banking would always say, best time to invest, 20 years ago. Second best time to invest, today. Fact of the matter is, all those are partially true, but not entirely. When we make something good happen today, now we can actually redeem part of the past, change it, transform it. We can take that sense of things or that missed opportunity, or whatever it was a long time ago or 2 weeks ago or Thursday, and not let it remain a regret, but rather become a catalyst for something positive. We can make it into a motivation and an inspiration for being the thing that got us to where we are today. And if the past is the motivation and the inspiration for good things that are happening now, then it's part of the good things that I'm doing now in this moment. What came before is the preface, the introduction, the run-up, the launch pad to the good things now. In a very real way that elevates and even redeems the past. Maybe sad or unfortunate things happen to us in our own individual histories. Those things can remain as weights around our ankles, or they can become the wind beneath our wings to help ourselves and help others to deal better and more constructively with similar situations. We can build on what came before, no matter what the nature or shape or taste of those things was, and actually transform them into building blocks of good. That is exactly what we will do on Yom Kippur. We've discussed before the view that the 5 Amidot, the 5 Shemona Esrei prayers of Yom Kippur, Ma'ariv, Shacharis, Musaf, Mincha, and Ne'ilah, parallel the 5 levels of our souls, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. The Yechida, or the most essential part of our soul, is where it connects to the source of all life, God, the maker and master of all. When we tap into that level of our being, all Yom Kippur long, and especially at the Ne'ilah service, which is why that service is the most special part of a most special day. When we tap into that, we're above history, we're above time. Where and how accidental transgressions of the past get transformed into merits. We reach above time and rectify and sanctify and elevate that which previously was not to our credit, but now it is. And that brings us to the other understanding of focus on the present. Please don't think it's corny, but I learned it from a friend who signs off their email with the line, "Today is a gift, that's why it's called the present." This is a gift, this is a present, each day, certainly every year, how much more so each Tishrei, each high holiday season when we're given by God a new lease on life, a clean slate, the gift of tshuva, and the ability to free ourselves from and sail beyond our past, however normal or comfortable or uncomfortable or cozy it was. What awaits us ahead is even better if we make it that way. So yes, focus on the present, which is the here and now, what can be accomplished today, and also that wondrous present, that gift of teshuva and renewal and elevation and growth that we receive at some level every day, and at this time of year, in a way that even the makers of Hallmark cards, even the florists, even RBC, anyone who and everyone who wishes us a happy and healthy and sweet new year, whether they realize or not how powerful and all-encompassing and liberating that is, they're helping us to realize. So please, God, may all our anxieties be quelled. May all our prayers be answered for the good. May all our test results be negative. May all our boosters be painless. Even more so, may all our days be filled with joy and appreciation and learning and companionship, fulfillment, open-heartedness, open-mindedness, kind-heartedness toward ourselves and to others. And may our precious Kehillah with all its members amongst Gans Klal Yisrael be sealed for a good new year, a happy, healthy, and sweet new year, beruchnius ubagashmius, in the physical and spiritual senses altogether. Amen. Kein Yehi Ratzon. Shabbat Shalom. Gemar Chatima Tova.